You're It. I'm Amanda Malcolm, and you're listening to You're It, Girl, a podcast focused on you and what propels you, because that past, it does not define you. Your time is now, and you're it, girl. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to You're It, Girl. I have on the other side of this Zoom call my good friend and, gosh, Kam, you are, I guess I would call you like my adopted daughter because you lived with me for almost 2 years. So she is calling in from South Africa today. So Kam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you.
I've literally watched like every podcast episode, so I'm pretty much in the loop with youreitgirl. So I'm Kam. I was Amanda's au pair when I was 18 till 20, almost 21. Can you believe that?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I can't.
And I basically, I want to say I was an au pair, but I basically feel like I just was like an extended daughter in the Malcolm household. It was less of me kind of guiding the kids and more Amanda guiding me. And
a little bit of both.
You cannot do this, Kam. No, Amanda, you just don't understand. You've never 19, you don't understand how I'm feeling right now. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I've known Amanda since I was 18. I just can't get over that. And I'm so happy to be on the podcast finally. I love youreitgirl. I really do. I think it's bringing such relevant and important conversations for us to be having now, especially post-COVID. Oh my gosh.
And Kam, what do you do right now for a profession?
Okay, so I own a digital marketing company with my friend Jennifer. It is called Jam Media Management. So basically we specialize in anything digital. I'm a media specialist, so I really enjoy like all the content creation and the editing and the graphic design side of our business. And then she handles like the boring stuff, like the contract writing and getting people to pay their invoices on time. That's not my...
It's not your forte. Definitely not your forte.
I'm just like, crazy flowers, rainbows. How can I make this into a pretty picture?
A creative.
Yes, I'm a creative.
And that's why you're so good at the job. And I just wanted to say before we launch into some of this, but I am so proud of you for where you have taken your profession and following your dreams. We used to talk about this stuff all the time when you lived with me, and I just watching you from afar and then talking to you the other day in our 2-hour catch up on the phone. I'm so proud of who you've become and what you're doing with your life. So proud.
Thank you. No, it was actually like we were talking on the phone the other day, and I was saying to you, like, I really came to America and I actually just had no idea what I wanted from my life. It was, I mean, who really does at 18? But I mean, I think I was just so indecisive about what I think I needed and versus what I wanted. And I really got to kind of watch you in your foundational, like kind of like as you were climbing to the top of the real estate empire. I really I saw, like, I'll never forget when one of the first weekends I had to come with you, and then we went to this house on the corner, and it was a little rundown, and you were like, no, we need to work on the curb appeal, and you put in like so I really got to, and you were telling me like how like there's places that you've done now that like they've had cockroaches and stuff, and you have to cook this and that, and I really kind of just watch the perseverance that you had to have in order to kind of climb up and be where you are in the industry now. And I think that put a lot of emphasis on work ethic for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know like one thing that really does set you apart from everyone is it doesn't really matter if it is a Saturday, a Sunday, or a Monday. You're putting in 100% of your energy 100% of the time. And I feel like I really took that with me and kind of applied it into Jam. Obviously, I think looking back on it now, age has really helped quite a lot as well.
It does help. I know. Cam and I share a lot. There's a lot of similarities. If you haven't listened to the other episode that Cam was on, go back and listen to that episode because it gives a lot of background into her and her life and some of her experience when she was living with me in the United States when she was 18 and 19 years old as an au pair, which is like a cultural exchange type of program where someone basically from another country comes and lives with you. You're their host mom, and they basically nanny for your children and work in the US and have that job while living with you. So Cam and I know each other quite well. And what we didn't know about a lot of our similarities when she lived with me is that some experiences that we had when we were younger actually kind of correlate with one another from a trauma perspective. And so as we actually had not had these conversations when she was living with me several years ago. This was what, 7 years ago? 7 years ago.
Wow. 6 years ago. Yeah.
6 years ago. We didn't know this about each other, but I don't know if you all know this or not, but I released this podcast.
Really?
Called YourItGirl, and Cameron listened to some of the episodes and some of the initial episodes and had reached out to me and said, wow, well, actually, Cam, you share that. So you listened to some episodes and realized what?
I listened to the podcast, the first and second episode, and I reached out to you immediately and I was like, oh my gosh, Amanda, I had no idea that, this makes so much sense to me now. This makes so much sense to me how there were certain, things that I really felt like you understood on a very different level because of how similar some of our traumas are and the things that, experiences that we've had in life at ages where, I really don't think anybody is ready at any age for trauma, but I think it was at very, very fundamental ages for us in our lives. And I messaged you and I just reached out and I was just like, wow, like I had no idea this happened to me, X, Y, and Z. And I'm so grateful that you put your story out there because it really made me feel like, okay, it's one thing to see, in books and TV when people kind of talk out about their trauma, but it's a completely different thing when you see somebody that you actually know, that you have, like, we live together. You were basically my second mom.
Mm-hmm.
So to know that we have that understanding was a very, like, special thing for me.
Yeah, it was very special to me when you reached out to me about that too, because talking about that stuff, and we're going to talk about a heavy topic today, but talking about those things it puts you in a very vulnerable space. And the whole purpose of it is like, you're like, I want to talk about this so I can help people. And what I didn't realize when I started talking about all of this was the amount of people that would reach out to me that I was close to, that I had no idea that they had experienced things like this in their life. And when we talk about trauma, we're talking about some pretty intense types of things here. I mean, molestation and rape and many other different topics that people have confided in me that they've had similar experiences. And you look at people and you go, it's just so shocking that we're all going through this life and this world, navigating it through and overcoming these types of experiences. And there's so many of us that share them.
I always think of whenever somebody asks me kind of like how do I describe what it's like going through some of the like events that have happened to me in my life. And I always say, when you're in the thick of it, it kind of feels like you are in the ocean and the water's up to here. And the wind is starting to pick up and the waves are starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you look up because you finally realize that you are not okay. As you look up, a wave just crashes you down. Then you swim all the way back to the top, grab your first breath of air, and then another wave hits you down. And then the cycle just repeats and repeats and repeats. And for me, personally, that is the greatest way that I can describe kind of what depression or anxiety feels like. And I think that for me, I had no idea that you were feeling so down or, as they say, so blue.
So,
Um, to
so
put it
blue,
like,
like the ocean waves that are crashing you down.
yeah. Um, so I think it's, we both live our lives very much in social media. And we were talking earlier about how on social media, everyone sees just the absolute best side of your life. And no one truly knows what is actually going on behind the smile that you so easily, learn how to put on. Because if you've grown up in a situation where, you've there's so much crying and so much sadness. So why on earth would I, as an individual, add to that sadness by saying, "Oh, I'm not in a good mood"?
Right.
Everyone else is around me is so sad. Why would I be sad? I need to make sure that everybody else is happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of get into the early adult phases of your life, and you're like, "Wow, I'm actually really tired, and I don't feel like these smiles and this happiness is genuine anymore."
Mm-hmm. The genuine piece of it is actually really interesting because that is the piece that was really difficult for me to overcome. And for those of you that don't know this, I just actually came out of, like, in the last 3 months, of this terrible depression. And so that's what Kam and I are going to be talking about today, because she had a similar experience and actually voluntarily went into hospital because she recognized that this was something that she needed help with. And the interesting thing about depression is, one, that nobody really loves to talk about the subject, but two, how quickly you spiral out. And what is shocking about it is, when I started this podcast, I was actually warned by a good amount of people that were like, "Hey, when you start talking about this stuff, this might actually open up some things and some feeling, and be prepared for what may happen." I could cry just thinking about it, because I thought I was so prepared. And then there's always some sort of, catalyst, as you and I spoke about before, some sort of catalyst that launches you into this depressive state. And the downward spiral is so fast. The
Yeah.
waves that really, like, pound you down, and you just feel like you literally are drowning, and you're so sad. So
Yeah, and it
sad.
just want to have a second to take a breath. And that's why I always describe, depression as, when someone says to me, like, "How does it feel?" I always say to them, like, it's like you're in the ocean, and just the wave, it keeps hitting you. And every single time you think, "Okay, I'm going to take a breath," it just knocks you back down again. And it's eventually, I think, looking into the near happy future, you figure out, okay, don't swim up, swim under. And eventually you'll get to the top and you'll be able to breathe and you'll see a beautiful sunset.
Oh, I love
But
that. Don't
in the
swim up,
moment,
swim under. Yeah,
yeah.
swim under.
And in the moment though, you're like, "Oh my, like, this is not gonna get better. This is not gonna be okay."
No, you feel like
Um,
it's not. And you had mentioned something too about the smile um, that we so easily give off, that we've so easily learned to give off. And I had a friend, I don't remember if you met my friend Lauren, but she actually
yes.
helped me. Yes. So she actually helped a bit with youreitgirl, and she struggled with some anxiety and depression stuff too. But she had always, bless her heart, she always checks in on me. And she had said to me for a long time, which is odd. It's almost like, did you know that this was going to happen? But she had said to me for a long time, always be mindful of the person that always seems so happy.
Absolutely.
Because generally speaking, it's the person that always seems and appears so happy that sometimes is actually struggling the most. And you and I talked about that a bit. So what was that experience like for you? What was, I guess, like the catalyst that launched you into the depression?
So, so I had experienced various traumas, from assault to, from assault to rape to bullying to some form of abuse in relationships with boyfriends. I'd been experiencing that from about probably age 14 onwards. And I very much was just always known for being a super happy, bubbly person. You really could not catch me on a day where I was just like really sad. And if I was sad, I would very much be like, okay, it could be worse. Like my hair could be frizzy. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something. And so when I turned 18, some things got exposed about me. Not, I don't really want to say exposed. This is so difficult to kind of navigate on how you speak about this, because you don't really want to trigger anybody else, but you also want to be able to tell your story. And so basically when I was 14, I was being abused and groomed by a boy that I was dating. He was 18, 19 years old at the time. And, you know, he very much kind of instilled what I thought relationships were supposed to be and how they were supposed to be. And he really just kind of destroyed any self-confidence that a 14-year-old girl could possibly try and develop. I had no self-esteem. And yeah, he basically explained to me that no one else is going to love me. And there is no other place for me to be loved except for by him. Because, you know, at home, my family was fighting all the time. My dad was under a lot of stress for work. My mom was also going through a bunch of changes. My sister was getting to the place like, you know, she was starting school and getting a little bit older. And so all of this stress was happening, and I just felt like I had no one really to turn to and no one to talk to. And I very much fell into the arms of what I thought was this, you know, this knight in shining armor, but he was actually, you know, like the devil in disguise. And he basically convinced me when I was 14 to send him a bunch of photos of myself, so child pornography. And eventually when I was about 16, I realized like, whoa, this guy is actually abusing me. Like, this is abuse. You know, he had pushed me around a couple of times, but I thought to myself, like, no, this is just love. This is what you're okay with it. And so I broke up with him because I realized he was abusing me. And I still look back at that moment and I'm like, I did the right thing. You know, like I did what they say, like what the woman's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I said no to abuse. I walked forward with my head held high. I picked my stuff up and I moved forward. And I was only 16. I was so brave and I did it. You know, I did the right thing. I did what we're supposed to do. And as soon as this man realized how happy I was, he ended up releasing all those photos onto the internet. And it kind of spread across the Western Cape, which is kind of like the state that I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably just like the worst time of my life. And keep in mind, I mean, this is in between this abuse happening and it being leaked. I had been assaulted as well. So I was already dealing with so much.
Mm-hmm.
And when it all got released, I mean, I really can't explain to you what it did to me as a human being, and having to sit down and tell your parents, you know, Dad, I'm really sorry, but even though you try to raise me as a strong, independent woman, I degraded myself because I felt so insecure to doing this. And the look that my family gave me, I think when they first found out, because they were so disappointed, was something that really triggered something in me that I lost a part of myself that day. You know, I lost that part that was like very enthusiastic, that I could be like, you know, even though this bad thing happened, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So eventually that happened. And this was obviously 10 years ago. So there was no law really to help girls that were my age in these situations when we were being abused by these men and groomed. I still consented to sending those images. So it was like, do I press charges and get in trouble as well? Or do I keep quiet and move on with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And I still think about that. And it's just, again, I know I said it before, but like you think like I did all the right things. I was kind, I was nice, I never bullied anybody. I worked hard at school. I was a good daughter, I was a good sister. I try to help as many people as possible. And with the things that I did at school, like I tried to be as involved in community outreach as I could. I really thought like I am I am the definition of what I should be doing at this age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when all of this kind of came out, I was about 18. So it had been quite a long time since I'd sent the stuff to when it actually came out. And it just really exploded my life in a way that I cannot explain to you. I had people hunting down my number. I had people, messaging me from random numbers saying that they were going to find me and rape me. Or, I had people saying that they were going to try and find out where I live. I had boys push me into corners when I was at school and ask me how much for an hour. It was
horrible. So this was about the time actually that you and I met, really. So then you ended up leaving that behind and coming to the States.
I ended up kind of putting it all at the back of my head and realizing like I cannot live my life like this anymore, because if I do, I'm going to kill myself. If this carries on like this, if I keep staying in this mindset, I'm not going to be okay. So I have a choice of whether I dwell in it or I just completely black it out. And then, I truly believe that God was watching and he knew that I needed something positive and something to strive forward for. And and then I met you. And then, like by continuous coincidence, we kind of got in contact, and I moved to the US, and I said to myself, like, I was going to start completely anew. I was going to be any version of myself that I truly believed I was and I wanted to be, because all of those mistakes and those terrible things that had happened to me were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can skip a few years forward from all of that, I moved back to South Africa when I was 21. And I would say within like 3 or 4 days of being back home, all of that trauma just came straight back. It was literally 3 or 4 days, and it was just all back. I felt unsafe in every area that I was in. I was watching my back around social circles. I had this continuous fear that people were going to find out that I was back in the country, and they were going to come, these guys that had messaged me were going to come look for me again. So I buried it. I buried it deep, and I just made some teenage decisions. I wanted to live my life because I had been so scared of people being aware of who I am or what I'm doing or where I am, that I feel like I kind of put myself in a box for a long time. And then when I was 24, I moved in. I had a bunch of roommates. I finally found a really good, decent amount of friends. And we still just had a really deep conversation. And one of them said to me, "Oh, but like, why don't you like to be hugged?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said to me, like, you don't like to hug people. Like, if you meet new people, you don't hug them. And I was like, I didn't know I do that. And they were like, yeah, no, you're not an affectionate person at all.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. My friend Madeline would say that to me. She was like, Amanda, you don't know how to hug. She's like when you hug somebody, you're supposed to like actually give an embrace. Like, what is the deal with you? Like, let me show you how to do it.
I know. And so like, I was like, what are you talking about? And as I started thinking about like why I don't like being hugged, everything kind of reopened. And I remembered all these things that I had blacked out for the longest period of time. And man, I cannot explain to you. It was like my brain literally put all of the stuff into one area and then just switched the light off and put it in complete darkness. I could not remember any of it. A complete trauma response. And then I started remembering all this stuff, and I was like,
Mm.
whoa. And once you open the lid on something like that, there's no way of putting it back on. And
Yes.
I just spiraled because I had never spoken to my family about any of the stuff that had happened to me. I'd never spoken to them and explained to them kind of like what was going on or how I was feeling on the inside. So my anxiety and my depression just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually one day my little sister sat down next to me and she was just like, you need help. Like, you need to go and get help. You need to,
How did
you're
she know?
spiraling. I think, I think when I went out, I would like overdrink, or I would just, I think there was a sadness within me, I think, that really started showing when I kind of remembered all those blacked out memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart just to think about that goal right now and how almost broken she felt.
Yeah.
Like I look back and I feel like a huge part of who I was just ripped away from me. And then I made up another version, and then that version was ripped away too. And my sister is somebody that, she's my best friend. I love my sister with all my heart. And she immediately noticed. She was like, you need to go and get help. You need to start going to therapy. So I started going for therapy. And within the first session, she said to me, she was like, no, if you carry on like this, like, there's no way. And I think we should put you in a clinic. And I was like, a clinic? Like, are you insane? Like, absolutely not. I am 100% okay. I'm telling you all
It's
this
fine.
trauma.
Totally fine. Everything's
Yeah,
fine.
no, I am so okay. Do you not see the smile on my face? Like, where are the tears? Where's the breakdown? I'm not seeing it. You are clearly not good at your job. I literally said to her, I was like, are you insane? Absolutely not. I do not belong in a hospital. And I very much went through this denial phase, and eventually, I went back for my second or my third session, and she just kept saying to me, she's like, I know it's scary, but you got to admit when you need help. Like, it's okay. You sometimes you can't do it alone, and that's fine. I don't have to tell anybody. I don't have to, post about it on Facebook and let everybody know that I'm I'm going in the loony bin. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
It's not funny. It's not funny.
But it is fun. I feel like all people with trauma do this though. Like, we make jokes about it because why do we want to wallow in that sadness anymore?
It's true. And the sadness is a lot. You brought up an important piece before we go through the rest of that story, but it's the piece of it's not even like you intentionally know that you're burying the things. It's like the trauma response has taught you out of survival that it just goes over here. And then when the door opens and it starts coming out and you actually can feel, because we talked about that on the phone too, I literally couldn't feel anything until unless it was an extreme high of, and not like a substance abuse high because I don't use substances, but like an extreme high of like a travel or a relationship or a work accolade. Like, I didn't know how to feel that. And then when there was something, for me, it was like sort of the launch of this podcast and then some other things that happened. I don't want to go into that whole thing, but there was a thing that, like you said, opened the box. And once it was open, now I was feeling all of these things and I hadn't felt before. And now that I had all of these feelings, I didn't know how to process it. It was so much, it was so heavy, and it all made me so sad. And so the depression piece of it is like, it's so crazy how quickly it happens and how quickly the sadness, you're overcome by the sadness and the feeling. And then, like you said, you were going out and then you would drink. If my mom wasn't an alcoholic, I literally was like, oh my gosh, I know why people drink now. I know why people use substances now because I feel so sad and so horrible and so much pain. I want this to go away. Can somebody sedate me with something? Please.
Yeah, it's like I would rather feel
Put the things
like,
back in the box.
yeah, no, absolutely. Like, please take it away. Like, I don't want to deal with this. And I'd rather be completely wasted out of my mind and feel something else that's horrible than feel these things that I'm being confronted with that I don't actually think I'm ready to be confronted with.
Right.
And looking back now, I believe that, I have a strong faith in God, and I'm very grateful for that because I feel like He was a massive part in where I have gotten and how I've gotten there today. And I truly believe that He knew that I was actually ready to confront these issues. I may not have thought I was, but I was. My brain, my body was saying, it's time. It's time you heal. You cannot keep going like this. And when I got into the clinic, I was there for about 28 days. So I was there for almost a month. And nobody knew at all. It was only my mom, my dad, my sister, my boyfriend, and my business partner that knew that I was there. Everybody else thought I was taking a trip to Johannesburg. So
it's a long trip to Johannesburg.
Yeah. And so I got there and it was amazing. I met people that were really struggling with things just like me. I got diagnosed there with a few things. I got diagnosed with just top few things with PTSD, which would explain all my impulsive responses to things. I got diagnosed with severe anxiety, depression, and borderline personality disorder. And so that for me, when I started learning about, what I was being diagnosed with, I was like, whoa, that makes so much sense. And that really explains so much. And now I can learn techniques and ways of pulling myself out of those kind of depressive episodes that I'm about to hit. Like, I know that if I'm feeling, I mean, everybody's their own individual in these situations, but I know if I feel like I'm having a panic attack, to sit on the floor, in the shower with a bottle of water, drink ice cold water in the shower. And that is like my way of calming myself down.
But at least you have a way. You have a way and a tool. Now, it's interesting that you say it's once you understand why you're feeling that way and you can put logic to it. I think I've talked to other people about this too. And I think there's something involved with trauma where it's like, if I can understand the logical piece of it, then absolutely, I can break it down and understand, okay, this actually makes sense why I felt that way. And so now when I start to feel this again, now I know what to do. It's helpful to have a tool that you can grab at, instead of literally trying to swim and you're drowning because you can't get a lifeboat. There are lifeboats for you.
I think what trauma, with people that suffer with trauma or have had experiences in depression or whatever, what we do is it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why am I suffering with this? Mm-hmm. What did I do? It doesn't make sense. So I find that when people that, when we can get a reason and an understanding as to maybe that's not why it happened, but this is how it's happening, we will grab onto that almost like a lifeline, mm-hmm. because it's something to make sense. It's something concrete that I can actually grab.
Exactly.
Because all these feelings that I'm feeling, I can't touch the sadness. I can't show somebody the sadness. I can only feel it on the inside, which makes it so confusing and so difficult. And I think that is also that there's so many issues around mental health and healthcare that, is being provided and ways of teaching people on how, I personally believe mindfulness, it's one of the therapy techniques that I learned, mindful behavior. I personally think that should be taught to kids in school.
It should be.
On how to sit down, to breathe in, center yourself. Okay, it's not the end of the world. I'm feeling stressed out right now. There's a lot happening. Let me just slow it down quickly. I don't have to complete it all at once. This project and this project, if I don't get it done, yes, I would love to get it done. but I'm not going to allow myself to feel sick in
Right.
order. I'm going to call somebody and say, I need help. I need an extension. I'm not coping. And that's okay. And I feel like we're not taught that at a young enough age. And for me, when I ended up in the clinic, I was there for 28 days. And after that, I kind of got pushed back. I call it the real world because, like, you're in this beautiful, calm, peaceful, tranquil bubble when you're in the clinic. And then when you get pushed back into the real world, it's like you're back in everyone's face. You're back in family drama, in work drama, in life demands responsibilities from you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're pushed back into all of that after being away from it for 28 days. So now you're feeling strong and healthy, and then just stress knocks you out. And for me, that's actually what put me in, I was out of the hospital, I think, for a month or two, and I ended up being put in intensive care because I ended up overdosing one night, and my sister and my mom ended up taking me to hospital. And for me, waking up the next day, I had all the tools. I had all the tools on how to pull myself back out. It was just more about, did I want to?
Uh-huh.
You
Yes.
I
Did
feel
I
like
want
that is
to?
something so important that we should be talking about is how do you know when you want to? Like, how did you know that you were done feeling the way that you felt?
When I walked out of my bedroom one day and I looked at my daughter lying there on the bed, playing her iPad, and was looking at her going, I think maybe I could cry thinking about this. I think maybe, she has such a great dad and great siblings. Like, it'd probably maybe just be easier for her. Like, if I just wasn't there, like it could be like, it would be fine without me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, she'll be fine. She has a great dad. Like, she has siblings. She'll be fine. And I was like, literally like, what was that thought that I just had? And I'd been thinking some pretty terrible things, and I'd been dreaming about some terrible things. And to have that thought looking at her, I will never forget it. And I mean, it was a long pause, and it freaked me out. And I called one of my best friends and I was like, I have to talk to you. And that was the first time I had actually opened up. I had called my other friend Abigail and many times, like, crying hysterically and not being able to stop and saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I'm so sad. I can't stop crying. Like, what is going on? But this was the first time I had admitted that I was having, thoughts that I didn't know how to deal with. And
Those
thankfully, I made that call to her, and she had had similar experiences that she had never talked about. And she was like, Amanda, this is what you need to do. She's like, you need to call your therapist. And she's like, and I'm going to check on you every day. And also, just so you know, these thoughts, they're not normal, but a lot of people have had them. I'm like, I can't call my
absolutely.
therapist. She's going to put me in the loony bin. And she was like,
That,
she's not going to do that. I promise you that's not going to happen.
is
And
it what's it 5150?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So that's how I knew. And I knew that I wanted to obviously be around, and that those thoughts weren't normal, and I had to somehow get out of it. And so it's a whole nother story, which maybe we should get on another episode and talk about at a different time. But the point is that I realized that it was time I needed to tackle it. I had to get some help. I wanted to. I just knew that I couldn't do it alone. And thankfully, I have the most amazing friends, and I have an amazing therapist. And I told my business partner what's going on. I told my ex-husband what was going on. And so I had support with people that were uncomfortable checking in too. Like,
Absolutely.
definitely, we talked about that. People are uncomfortable with it, right?
100%. It's like the people that have like that absolutely need to know are ironically the ones that you want to tell the less, because you know that they're going to be like, I am sorry that you're sad, but like pat pat. I don't know what, like like, you've got this. You
You
can
can
do
do
this.
it. Yeah. Like everything is going to be fine. You know that, right? Like you really want to, like you want to be able to experience things in the world. Like you're going to be fine. Like, see your therapist and you're like, okay, yeah, this is a lot more than that, but thank you.
It's those uncomfortable confrontations which make you almost look inwards. I don't know if you felt that as well. Is like it kind of makes you look at your relationships, and for me, a big one is with my mom. My mom and I did not have a good relationship at all when I was young, and now looking back, I can fully admit it was because I was an asshole. I was an asshole when to my mom. It was terrible, so mean. Um, but I will say that when I went to my mom and I said to my mom, I'm going to be admitted into a hospital, there was not one moment that she judged me. She went, in actual fact, she helped me pack my bag. She took me to the shop. She was like, let's get you some comfortable clothes so that you can feel good. Because, when you look good, you feel good.
I always feel that too.
Yeah, like when you look good, you feel good. And my mom's like, she's such a prim and proper lady. She, the other day she broke her foot, and I had to go and get her because she couldn't stand up. And I got her the clothes, and she was like, her foot is now swollen. Okay, she's like, no. You need to quickly go and iron my pants before you take me to the emergency room. I can't go with wrinkles in my pants, Cameron. Like, that doesn't look tidy. I was like, Mom, your foot's broken. Like,
oh my gosh, that is so funny.
So she was the one person that, like, really, she stood by me. And I think there was a lot of hurtful things that I had to say to my mom in order for me to heal.
Yeah.
And she just took it, and she just said to me, she was like, I love you, and I'm so sorry that there have been moments where you felt like I didn't love you, or you felt like I wasn't loving you the way that you needed to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she's human. She has her own things that she's going through, and not that she finds that as an excuse, but it really these situations either make or break your relationships with people. It really pulls some very uncomfortable situations, because the big question is, why are you depressed? Mm-hmm. Did you find people ask you that? Like, why, Amanda, why are you depressed?
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure.
And that was the absolute worst, because there's a multitude of reasons. It's actually, I'm not depressed only because, I'm not feeling depressed because of, just because I went through X, Y, and Z situations. That's not why. It's because I genuinely feel so overwhelmed that I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And when you open up to people about it, you really realize, yes, not everyone is diagnosed with depression, but like 80% of the people that I know have experienced
some level
of depression and anxiety.
1,000%.
And it's so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me how I thought I was so alone, and I was so embarrassed, Amanda, when I had to tell my dad, sorry, my voice, that I was going into the hospital, I burst into tears. I burst into tears, and I couldn't even tell him where I was going. I just said, Dad, and then I just burst into tears, and he went into like fight or flight mode. Like, I think my dad was ready to take somebody out. Like, he just wanted to protect me. And he grabbed me, hugged me, what's wrong? Like, talk to me. And then I told him, I'm really depressed and I need to go and get help. And my dad is such a strong man. He's individual. He's always looked after my family, and he's had a really hard go at it in his life as well. But he's really put everything aside, from, getting braces so that I could get braces, to giving me the last food on his plate because he knows that it's my favorite food and I want to eat it. And there's so many things my dad has provided for us that just must have been almost impossible for him to get there. But this was one area where he knew nothing about. Yeah. Like, he really knew nothing about mental health, because I don't think his family had even discussed the levels of mental health mental health issues that were kind of going on in their household. So now he gets thrown in his like late 40s, he gets thrown into a situation where it's like, oh shit, my daughter is depressed and I can't punch the depression.
Right.
I can't send her somewhere to a new school or something so she can make friends and it's going to go away. It's like, how do I really saw my parents being like, what do we do? What can we do to help you?
Right.
And it kind of just got into the point where I actually got my therapist eventually to call my parents because they just were not understanding that it's not something they can take away. They've just got to kind of put their hands up and be like, I'm here for you.
And I think that's a natural parenting role to want to try to take away their child's pain. So I think that the theme of this really is, and thankfully your parents, they were supportive in that way, right? So you did have their help and support. And I think that that's the most important thing. If you're feeling this way, there's always somebody that you can go to for support because you have to start talking about it. Because the problem with it is that depression, you feel so alone anyway. And so if you're not speaking or connecting with someone, then you feel even more alone. And if there's people that are in your life surrounding you that aren't going to be a support system, look towards that person that is, who's going to give you the right advice about seeking a higher form of help, whether that be a therapist or an institution or something like that. So that way you can get through that and work on those things so you don't stay in that space, because climbing out of it yourself, it didn't work for me. It's impossible.
I mean, you have quite a big fan. Like, I know obviously you're the it girl and this is your podcast, but I mean it's just an interesting idea to think like you come from such a massive family. So I mean, how did you find, like, did you tell your family and they responded in the way that you thought they were going to respond? Like, who do you think your support structure was? Because I did find it interesting because I know personally, like, my family was my support structure, but then one of my very good friends, her boyfriend's family was her support structure. So it's very different for everybody.
It's different. And I feel like there needs to be a part 2 to this episode as well, as far as the type of support that you can lean on and receive. In my family, the family dynamic is quite odd. So no, I did not tell anyone. I kind of disappeared. I isolated, which a lot of people do. In my family, I'm the strong one. So to be in that space, I felt very weak. And so I completely isolated and secluded. And I don't think that my family really knows quite what to do when that happens with me. And so my support system is generally to my best friends. And so those are the ones that literally know everything about me. And thankfully, they're the most amazing humans in the world and are basically like family.
Well, it's the family you choose, right?
Yes.
Like,
so
what
would you say is, because Nick is telling me we have to wrap this up, so we're going to have to do a part 2 of this episode. Nick. So what would you say is the number, I don't even say like number one thing, but when you start to feel that way, what advice would you have, having been through, dealt with all this trauma, been actually in an institution, and then come out of it and then had to choose, hey, this is actually my decision. I have all the tools. Now I need to use them. If someone's in that situation, what's the advice that you would give them?
I would say that even if you are scared, and it's a very reasonable thing to be scared, reach out to somebody, ask for help. There are so many resources for you. And whether that is calling a hotline, and saying like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Please give me some information for my area. I am feeling, really confused about my own feelings. Or call a friend. You don't have to get into what has happened, what has made you, what has triggered you to feel this way. But I think the the overall message is that when it comes to your mental health, you need to do whatever you need to do, not only for the ones that love you, but for yourself. You need to love yourself enough to want to put in the work, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be one of the most difficult things you ever do in your life. But the payoff and the pressure that is taken off of you will be a reward that's tenfold of the work that you put in.
And it is it's the hardest thing, that initial step, to reach out, call the hotline, tell your friend, tell your mom, tell your ex-husband. But as soon as you make that initial reach out, the pressure already starts relieving. That's the thing. And that's the thing that I wasn't expecting. It was like just so long, just being dragged down. And then as soon as I opened up, I immediately started feeling better. And it wasn't all day. I mean, it literally lasted like 30 seconds. But over time, it goes from 30 seconds to 3 minutes to maybe an hour out of the day to half a day to 1 day to 1 day for a while of feeling good to then maybe 3 days of feeling good to a whole week of feeling good.
Absolutely.
Then once you start feeling good, you're really in a place where you can really start working on more of these things. So if you don't have anyone to reach out to, or you feel like you don't, the whole purpose of us talking about this too is we're headed into the holiday season. And this is generally the time frame where a lot of people, it's the highest month for suicide is in, I think, December. During the holiday season, depression, anxiety, because we're around families and things that trigger us. And so if you feel like you don't have someone to reach out to, the reason why we're talking about this is because we've been in these situations. We know what it feels like. You can reach out to me. You know how to find me. Kam, how do we find you?
You can find me on Instagram. You can just type in @ and then Kam, Kam, Steyl, Steyl. So at Kam Steyl.
At Kam Steyl. And if we have a lot of comments on these episodes, it may be something that we come on and talk about again and just dive a little bit deeper into, because it's so complex. Then there's so much. And I wish we could go ahead.
Yeah, I would be interested into if you guys have any thoughts, questions, or even stories that you'd like to share about your experience, let Amanda know in the comments down below, because I think that would also be really interesting. It's one thing hearing stories from us, but hearing from people around the world, what they've been through and what they're going through, it can be a big learning lesson for all of us. I truly believe we've never stopped learning when it comes to our mental health.
And this is how we help each other. So if you'd like to hear more, let us know. Kam, the way that you talked about everything today and what you shared, I just wanted to thank you for being brave and sharing that. And I do have some ideas for some future episodes too. So I will reach out to you, and I know where to find you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. That is You're It Girl.